Welcome to a very special episode of The Rise, celebrating the launch of the Nucleus100. Over the last 6 months, we've reimagined what a modern Midas list should look like. Built from real data, founder validation, and input from dozens of the top GPs in the Valley to nail the weights and formula that measure what actually matters. The full methodology is live on the site for max transparency. As the top investor of the last decade, Keith Rabois joins us to share how he got there, his advice for those trying to take his place, and how he picks the emerging managers he LPs into. Of course, I couldn't resist asking about Open Door and how he landed Ramp, Fair, and more. Hope you enjoy. Keith, thank you very much for coming on my podcast called The Rise today.
Pleasure to be with you.
Amazing. So 2 main reasons we have you here today. My team has spent the last 3 months collecting data from founders, fund admins, PitchBook, Crunchbase, anything public. We scraped ex posts, press releases,
LPs,
everything possible, trying to get extremely creative to confirm and validate who did what deals where. And what we did is we pulled that together and we looked at the last 10 years performance of who are the best early stage investors out there. I think over a dozen posts on X. I have a decent following of partner GPs that have given 100 comments on iteration and feedback to the model and the weights. So trying to do it as transparent as possible. You are our number one top performing early stage investor of the last decade.
Sounds great. The methodology sounds perfect. I don't have any questions.
Honestly, just wanted to celebrate you on that.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Obviously, I didn't really do much. The founders did all the hard work. I'm sure we'll talk about all of them.
Let's start with Ramp, just because I'm in New York, right? We're in New York right now. They're the talk of, I think, the world to say, and definitely tech. When I look at Eric and Ramp, I know that was a wildly competitive deal and you didn't just participate, you led it. My question to you is, why do you think Eric and the Ramp team went with Keith Rabois to lead that first round?
Well, I think they appreciated first that I immediately grokked what they were up to. Literally 30 seconds to a minute into the meeting, they were presenting off Google Notes. They didn't even have a DAC. I was like, oh my God, boom, boom, boom. Yes, this works. Boom, boom. Riffed off some of their ideas. Immediately we're in mind meld with both Eric and Kareem. So I think they appreciate that. Obviously, I've had a track record of innovation in financial services, PayPal, Square, a bunch of other ones actually too. And so, they recognized that I had a lot of expertise in the areas that they were planning to compete in. But I think it was actually, we were in strategic alignment from like the split second we met, and cultural alignment. They really believed in this mantra that Vinod taught me when he was on the board of Square, that the team you build is the company you build. And so from day one, they were investing in how do you build a critical density of talent. And they realized, and that resonated with me, that would be, one area I could be insightful.
I love it. Did you have a prior relationship with that team?
I had never met them. Literally, my colleague Delian Aspiring had met Kareem playing a video game. Now, I had been looking for somebody to innovate and build a company in that space, and had been trying to pitch people, friends, random founders, that they should build something like Ramp. And then Delian was playing video games. He said, oh my God, I found your founder. And I was like a little skeptical, honestly. But I said, well, if you really believe that, bring them in. And so they flew out the next day. And literally they set up in this conference room and started presenting because they didn't have a presentation.
Ramp flew out to the Bay.
Yeah, flew out to the Bay Area, put up their notes on the screen, started sharing. And Eric started speaking about the vision, and I was like, "Oh my God!" And I started smiling at Delian. Actually, we've been friends forever, like probably at that point, like a decade. And so he knew that I was very happy with him. And literally, as we walked out of the conference room, I'm like, "We need to give him a term sheet now." So we offered like $3 million within 24 hours, and the rest, hopefully, is history.
Wow. So that kind of leads into the next question. I think the two lead deals here, Fair, Ramp, were like big winners on our list. We shortlisted these companies. Before I move on to Fair, on the Ramp side, like in particular, massive presence in New York, of course. You're now in New York. I'm curious, are you guys doing anything? Like, do you see them? Do you support them in any way while you're out here?
Yeah. So I joined the board from the very beginning of the seed
Awesome.
round. I'm still on the board, whatever years later. So yes, absolutely. We do one-on-ones. Actually, in their case, it's Kareem and Eric together typically. So Kareem and Eric and me. But we, as of today, still only have one other official board member. So we have a company, it's going to do $1 billion plus next year. We have 2 board members, external board members. That's it. Partially because the formula is working, the company's working, the culture is working, and most other people could just screw it up. So we're very judicious. We've even investigated what's the minimum number of board members you could have to have an IPO. Long story, but I personally think 7's better than 5, but you probably pull it off in 5. So when you see us announce the 5th board member, I just expect an S1, pretty soon thereafter.
Was there a moment, like you mentioned, that Delian was like smiling at you a little bit? You could tell that you like really liked the founders. Was there like was there like a signal or trigger? Was it a vibe? Like, what was it when?
Oh, it was, so first of all, Eric explained the vision of what they wanted to build, and they weren't going to use points. So I have this 20-year crusade against points. I think people who use points are like usually silly. Secondly,
when you say points, what do you mean by points?
Points, like other competitors give you points for spend and has misaligned incentives. The economics of it don't really work. It's like discounting. There's so many things wrong with points. So I have this allergy for basically my whole career against points. And Eric's like, we're not using points. And I was like, okay, great. All right. I'm already like leaning in. We want to use real cash back. I'm like, great. This sounds amazing. Then they explained what they built at Paribus, which had some leverage. So receipt parsing was going to be part of the original value proposition on expenses.
Yep.
And so Paribus did that. So I was like, great, these founders know how to do one of the core elements. What we're looking for is very obvious that they were talking about the team, that they wanted to build the quality of the team. So that resonated with me with the Vinod expression and adage. So it's just like, as I literally went through the notes, there's even an old obscure podcast that my friend Corey Levy did where he got his hands on those notes from the meeting.
Awesome.
And he asked me about it. And you could see the notes and the quality, and it's exactly, they had the roadmap, they had the vision. We've been executing the vision. Actually, we've been, the velocity of execution at Ramp is unprecedented. So actually, I think we're going to hit most of the vision next year, which almost no one's ever done in like less than 10 years. But he had the breadth of the vision was literally there on day one as well. We are going to be the CFO, the future of the CFO suite.
I love it. I always joke, it's now in my pitch when I introduce myself to like new people that I really want to work with, that Ramp has the CFO. I have the emerging and breakout manager. That's my ICP for Nucleus. That's what I'm building for, The other one that was notable on here was Fair. Before I get to that really quickly, do you have a different calculus for making determination if you want to lead at seed versus just participate?
I generally want to lead. So for a lot of reasons, I have this metaphor of concrete. And so concrete, when it's in liquid form, is very malleable and easy to shape. Once it solidifies, you have to pull a jackhammer out.
Yeah.
And jackhammers are extremely noisy, painful to use. So the earlier I get involved in a company, I can help shape the foundation. And so the earlier I get involved, the better. And that typically means leading. There are times and exceptions. For example, unfortunately, haven't figured out how to track every single startup created across the globe. And once in a while, I find out about a startup a little bit too late to lead, and they've already committed some money that someone else can invest. So an example of that was Avon, which is a phenomenal financial services company that will definitely propel me on your list next year.
Amazing.
And Avon, I intercepted after he'd already had a bit of a handshake deal to take money from Max Levchin. And obviously, Max has been a friend of mine for 25 years. So I can't really convince him not to take Max's money.
Yep.
So I could only invest $1 million and didn't lead the seed round. However, 3 months later, I did lead the Series A.
Let's go.
So I knew I'd found like one of the best founders in the history of the globe.
Yep.
And I was like, oh my God, I only got $1 million in. How do I lead the next round? And didn't miss on that. And we've collectively someone at KV, either me or Vinod and me, has led the next 3 rounds.
You mentioned, the era of AI, I feel like we're in this moment of time right now. There are more like new grads starting companies fresh out of school. I'm curious, just like zooming out a little bit, like
what are the effects 5-10 years from now with, instead of like the traditional route of go work at a great company, scale up thing, whatever it is, learn best practices, then go do it yourself. I think that was like way of the past. Now we're just like diving in full speed. What's your take on that period?
So by metaphor, I think it's a little bit like football. There's quarterbacks who are drafted in the first round that sit on the bench for a year or two and watch, and they occasionally get some, reps. And then there's others who are thrown in to start, day one. And I've studied every NFL quarterback since the modern era. Every quarterback who starts their first year right out of school has the worst year of their career. Their completion rate and certainly their touchdown to interception ratio is usually terrible. And then they get better and better and better, and they become a Hall of Fame quarterback. So I've studied literally every Hall of Fame quarterback.
Fascinating.
However, the ones who sit on the bench for 2 or 3 years, by the time they start, their first year isn't that distinct or worse or inferior than other years in their career. So there are advantages. Now, can you wait 2 years in a startup? Maybe not. So in the football season, maybe you do. Maybe you invest in the next 10, 15, 20 years and you wait. But in a startup, there may be a time, a window, et cetera. I think there is a movement towards younger founders, though. We've definitely noticed this, that there was a window 3 years ago when everybody was asking what happened to really young founders, because there weren't any companies really being created for about 3 or 4 years with super young founders. Now, I think you see a lot of the best companies do seem to have, whether they're 19 or 20 or 21 or 22, they're the young. And I think anytime you have a rapidly emerging technology, that can make some sense. So my friend who's on the board of Ramp, Zach Frankel, who helped start the company actually, has convinced me that the best founders in the AI wave are likely to be younger, and they're likely to be more technical than we've seen over the last decade. And there's a lot of logic to why.
Is there more gravity towards first-time founders building an AI right now than maybe the repeat founder who's been in the arena for a little while with you?
Well, I think the younger founders are growing up like basically AI native. Everything they do, every part of their life.
Totally.
And they don't have to learn new tricks. And so I think that's important, because sometimes the worst thing you can do is try to retrain your brain.
Yep.
Like David Sachs, who was our COO at PayPal back in the day,
Totally.
Before going on to political fame, used to basically say, I'd rather take someone as a blank slate than try to retrain someone's brain.
Yep.
And there's a lot of advantages in a rapidly emerging new technology in just learning things and doing things. And then actually, truthfully, honestly, they can pair with someone like me who's got a lot of experience, and I can point out like where the grass isn't quite as green as it might look and avoid some unforced errors, hopefully.
Yep.
So that concrete doesn't, solidify in the wrong way, but they can take advantage of all of the insights they have that I would never have.
Totally. I was, I'm not going to say the firm, but I was with an exceptional firm earlier this morning, and I made a comment, something to the effect of like, I've worked at some really incredible firms. I think True Search is the best firm on the planet. I think Mercedes at Artico is absolutely like Hall of Fame, Mount Rushmore search partner out there. I've worked with great associates. I, earlier this summer, hired an intern Reed, goes to school in Pittsburgh, not a computer science major, and is the first true 10x employee I've ever worked with in my entire life. And it is like a fun thing to watch. He's now with me junior year, full-time, entrepreneur in residence, Ramp inspired, candidly. A bunch of experimenting, and I think it's like a different breed of this like next generation. So that's very exciting.
Well, this is why I always counsel entrepreneurs, once their company gets to moderate scale, is you want to hire interns, especially technical and design interns, because you can get world-class talent.
Interesting. And
those people become founders. And once they become founders, you're never going to hire them again. So your one opportunity to tap into the top, 1%, 1 basis point or 10 basis points of talent, maybe as an intern.
That's amazing. I don't know if this is an intentional strategy of yours, but I have met 100 plus emerging managers this year. I've definitely seen you on a few LPACs, right? Is this something that you like intentionally seek to back emerging managers? Is it more organic, like in network folks that you know? How do you think about that?
It was organic initially. People just reached out who wanted to become emerging managers, said, hey, can I tell you about what I'm up to? Do you have any advice, et cetera?
Sure.
And then, by the way, would you invest?
Yep.
And so, if I had a strong relationship and really believed in the person, I would typically say yes. It does have the byproduct of occasionally creating, opportunity flow. And that's not a bad thing. Now, that said, I want to be the first institutional investor. So I don't love it when, my seed emerging managers send me deals. It means I've missed something.
Yeah.
But I still rather invest than, or lead the A.
Totally.
Which can be a very, lucrative business.
Yep.
Leading I'd rather lead seeds than A's, but if I'm going to miss the seed, I definitely want to try to find the Series A's that really matter. And so having a strong network of relationships with emerging managers does percolate a lot of opportunities that could be excellent Series A's.
Totally. That's really interesting. I think the emerging I met with an emerging manager last week who I thought was fascinating. They're doing the exact same thing, but with super angels. So they're LPing the super angels to get the first look.
So no, in somewhat Brian Singerman's strategy with his, announced fund with Lee is something like that on steroids, which, I've told him, I think that's a brilliant idea.
Interesting. When you do decide to back an LP, let's say they were like lesser known, you didn't work with them super intimately on a deal before, like what attributes are you really evaluating?
Well, differentiation, there was one time now pretty successful emerging manager, Rampton at Abstract, walked in, got introduced to him by Kevin Hart. So it was highly qualified referral.
Totally.
But when he walked in, I was actually like, how much of your GP do you have left? And I took all of it on the spot. I never met him before in my life.
Incredible.
But his strategy was differentiated at the time.
Interesting.
He had a whole deck explaining why there was alpha in his strategy. I was like, this is very coherent. You definitely know, you're seeing things that other people are missing. I want to have every dollar available. And then Kevin got annoyed because I took all of the dollars before Kevin could take some of them.
Is there an emerging manager out there that maybe you're not an LP in, but you're like, oh God, if I can get a little allocation with her or him, that would be incredible.
Well, I was mentioning, actually, I think Brian Singerman's the most interesting. Brian's definitely not an emerging manager.
Sure.
But I think that approach is very clever and differentiated. So that's what I'm usually thinking is like, does this person have a differentiated network that's really hard to scale? Or do they have an approach to investing that's differentiated and that I can kind of watch and learn from?
Amazing. Since you're number one on the Nucleus100, I think you're a good person to ask these questions to. So I work with a lot of folks who are either at tier one funds today, unhappy, thinking about exploring, talking to building this next gen program for Nucleus, right? A lot of these folks are looking to break into venture, coming from the prods and the Teal fellowships of the world. So they're already in good company. What's your advice for someone who has no venture experience, no investing experience, is clearly a top decile, technical talent, new grad, has an itch to break into venture? Should they apply? Should they join a startup? What's the path?
I think they should either join a startup or found a company with almost no exceptions, like especially if they're technical. You'd ask the question, like, why are they interested in venture? And usually when I meet people like that, the answers are pretty superficial. Like most people don't even understand what venture really is versus what it looks like on TV sort of thing. So I think it's better for almost everybody to try to build or actually build or watch people building. First of all, it'll make you more confident that you're making the right decision. This is a 20-year job minimum. Secondly, you'll be better suited probably to perform the job. And third, you'll have more credibility, which also helps you perform the job. So I think it's, Delian wrote a blog post, lessons, he had a series of 5 lessons he learned from Keith. And the first one is about how to become a VC. So I'd actually recommend that for people who are serious about like the topic versus, a quick 30-second, sort of piece of advice from me. But fundamentally, I think it's a bad idea for almost anybody right out of school to want to be VC. Doesn't mean you can't be an associate somewhere, spend 2 years like watching and learning. Is this right for me? Because you'll see how the industry really works.
Yep.
Then use the platform and vantage point of seeing 100 or 200 portfolio companies.
Totally.
And choose the best company for you to join and the best culture and the best opportunity for you. So it could be an introduction, like an entree job, and then find a company to go build. Then if you really enjoy the experience of working in venture and think it's what you want to do, then doubling or tripling down after you've built something is a very good move. And if you do this right out of school, by the time you're 30, you have maybe two shots at a startup.
I think that's amazing advice. The themes that I hear on my end when I'm talking to principal partner types that are reaching out to me, or I'm we're getting connected in some way, shape, and form. I want your reaction to. I think the number one theme is, first of all, gravity has shifted to track. It used to be on brand. 2 years ago, if you worked at a great fund, if you worked at Khosla, you could go pick an emerging fund or someone a little lower in the pecking order. They would hire you because you were from Khosla. You were trained well. You were under Keith. You were working with the node. Now it's all tracked. It doesn't matter if you worked at Khosla. If you didn't do any great deals at Khosla, it's less important that you worked at KB, right? I'm curious your reaction to like this sentiment. Alex, like I want to start exploring. I am lacking track because of the fund and the platform that I'm at. And I want to go to a new firm where I can see better deals and get into better deals.
Well, if you're young, that might be a mistake, at least in the second statement, because part of the art when you're young is to find and identify opportunities like that. When someone wants to work at KV, let's say, one of the things we're looking for is can they find and source, in quotes, opportunities. So when you're young, you've got to be able to develop that. You don't have to win. I think that's a mistake to try to prove you can win.
Yep.
That you can develop over time. You can partner with me. You can partner with Vinod. I mentioned, Delian basically found me Kareem, which led to Eric. Lots of good investments can be found by somebody early in their career. That's what you want to prove you can do. So if your excuse is, I'm at this mediocre place, but I can't identify opportunities, that's not going to work very well. If you can't win or you can't convince your partners or colleagues to invest, that's a problem that can be solved by changing funds or starting your own fund. But if you're not finding opportunities, that isn't going to get better.
I'm really glad you said that because that's what I think in my head every single time is like, okay, I actually think there's more synergies between like true tier one executive search and like what an associate capacity looks like at an early stage venture fund.
Definitely. I mean, I can help you close an investment. That's great. I can even help counsel the founder afterwards so that the company arguably improves its probabilities or amplitude of success. But, when I serve on 15 boards or whatever it is, I can't go track every founder across the globe anymore. There was a time in my career when I could because there was less startups. Like I actually did try to track every startup. And like, did I meet them for the seed? Did I meet them before their Series A? And I considered it a flaw every time I did it. That is impossible right now. So when you hire young and up and coming talent, one thing they must infallibly do is identify opportunities and develop some taste in escalating.
Yep. I think it's a figure it out job and venture.
Yes. Well, osmosis learning is important. It is important to pair with the right people, whether you're paired, with someone like me or someone else in a different firm, but there's 1 or 2 years at minimum of osmosis learning that I think is incredibly valuable. After that, I think you hit diminishing marginal returns.
Totally.
And so then maybe you should start your own fund, become an emerging manager, think about other options, but 1 to 3 years of immersion is incredibly valuable.
Let me ask you this. This is the second one on the more junior end. We do typically try to stay on the partner GP front. If it's an outlier junior role, like if you were hiring a chief of staff, I'd jump on that. Trent's in the room right now. You're not hiring a chief of staff. So we're good. But that's an example of like something that we would take on, right? I have one of those right now. And through line for these junior folks that we're running
You found a pretty good one, actually.
Who was that?
Well, I mean, at least, I don't know if he's your chief of staff or entrepreneur in residence.
The Reed, that's right. And Joseph's in the room too. Joseph's the next Reed. He's coming, he's week 2 right now. And he's off to an amazing start. But this is a very real sentiment right now. Excellent associate, excellent junior, but they're at a seed fund. They want to do big deals. So they might have the perfect relationship with that founding GP. That founding GP might be beloved by people all across the valley, people like you, that you definitely want to, be in those circles. What is your advice to folks like that? Do they stay and learn? Do they start exploring? What do they do?
It's extremely difficult if you want to lead larger stage rounds just because the price of being wrong is so high. So if we have a junior person and they want to lead a seed round, even a Series A, you're talking $1 to $20 million.
Yeah.
In a fund that's X billion dollars.
Totally.
So the only thing I can do is give you the license to do that, give you some feedback, but ultimately, I don't want someone who's just going to mirror my decision making. I want to see if you can actually invest. Maybe you can invest better than me.
Totally.
I'm like, for example, Delian pulled the trigger on a couple investments that are turning out pretty good that were certainly not like right down the middle for me.
Yep.
But the only way you learn that is like let Delian make some investments. It's a little bit like playing the guitar. You can read a book,
Totally.
but unless you pick up the guitar and unless you start playing it, you can't really tell. However, if you're leading $50 to $500 million deals, it's very hard to get any fund to just say, hey, go, make a couple investments, because it actually does matter to the returns of the fund. So it's a pretty serious challenge. Like, we have to deal with this all the time at the various funds, I've worked at, which is when do you let someone, sort of give them rope on $100 million check? That is a very complicated management decision.
I could only imagine. What about for the partner that is not feeling like they have a clear path to GP at a strong firm?
There's a simple path to that. Find interesting investment opportunities. Prove that top tier founders appreciate you in some capacity. Everything else you can envision happening later. If you can't do those things, it's not going to get better. Like, I actually think you can assess typically an early stage investor 3 years into their career. You don't need to see the returns. You can tell whether can they find things that are interesting. Can they forge a relationship with the founder where the founder will pay attention to them? If you can't do those things, it doesn't get better 5 years, 5, 6, 7. Like Semmel. So Semmel's a great, early stage seed manager.
Haystack? What are you talking about?
Semmel Shaw, yeah, Haystack. So he wrote this blog post probably 10, 15 years ago called like your portfolio is your career or something. And he basically, the argument of I'll have to find the link for you, but basically the argument is after you made 5 investments, that's kind of your trajectory. And there's a lot more truth to that. It doesn't mean you can't find exceptions. I don't need everybody sending me every exception.
Totally.
But like fundamentally, there's a lot more truth to that.
Interesting.
Than false.
At seed.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So my first 5 seeds, this is a little crazy.
Did you start off at seed?
Well, I was an angel investor.
Oh, that's right.
So my first 5 angel investments, I should just have retired there, truthfully. It was like YouTube, Palantir, LinkedIn, one other really good one. And I was like, okay. But the point is, like, I think he marshaled some evidence that that's actually more common. The funny thing is I started my angel career for a totally different reason. Almost no one knows
Why?
this. I was trying to look for a new cool job. So I figured out, well, at the time, Silicon Valley had crashed and burned kind of. So as PayPal, we sold the company to eBay, which is a bunch of like MBA bureaucrats. I was like, hell no, I'm not working at this place. So I got to go find a cool, new, interesting opportunity. Well, what's a good way to do that? Because there's usually one cool business role.
Smart.
And once they hire a business role, there's not a lot of great opportunities for someone like me who wants to be the business person.
Smart.
So I was like, okay, well, if I find interesting things, I'll just be an angel investor and I'll watch the company's trajectory. I'll get to work with the founders, see if I'd be a good cultural map, watch the company when they need, when do they need a business person? Like, when's the right time to inject yourself? And that's why I started angel investing. I had no idea they'd be proficient at it. It was really to find me a career. And then fundamentally, what happened though is there was one great part of that I forgot about though, was I actually wound up joining LinkedIn. I made an angel investment in the seed round, joined LinkedIn when they needed a business person. This is January 1st, 2005.
Wow.
6 months later go by and I found YouTube and I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. I need to invest. And I did. But then Chad really needed someone like me. And I actually parked them in our LinkedIn office in spare so I could kind of track them, what they were up to. But the problem was I had just joined LinkedIn 6 months earlier and I can't like really leave my job in 6 months, especially I was working for Reid Hoffman as a friend of mine.
Totally.
So I was like, the strategy worked perfectly. I had like 2 perfect opportunities, LinkedIn and YouTube, like show up, but it can't do them both at the same time. Although that was before the days that, founders did multiple things. So there was a problem with that strategy. But anyway, I did actually eventually then turn it into, I enjoy angel investing, so I should do more of it. But it wasn't the initial. Yelp was the other one. So the original goal though was definitely find career professional opportunities for me qua me.
It's a tough bar to set for first 5.
Well, it's a problem. Well, I was mentioning my first year at KV too. Also, the same thing happened.
Yeah.
So in the first 12 months at KV, I led the Series A, first institutional round for a firm, DoorDash seed, seeded Open Door.
Wow.
And invested / co-led whatever the Series C for Stripe. That's in the first 12 months. So I was like, maybe I should have taken the rest of the decade off.
Yeah, you could have.
There's something to that, though. The fairer point is there. Some people think it's a little bit like vintages in wine. There are years that are just better to be an investor, and you can't control that. You don't even maybe know it at the time, but your network is fresh. So when you first join venture, this is, I think, actually what happened in 2013 when I started in venture. My network was very fresh. So I knew the Stripe guys well. I knew Max really well, et cetera. I knew Tony really well. I'd been my intern at
the
Square.
PayPal folks.
Yeah.
Totally.
And so also when I left, when I mentioned my angel, I knew YouTube guys all worked at PayPal. Yelp guys worked at PayPal. So I was like leveraging LinkedIn, leveraging that. Palantir was one step removed. Nathan, that actually co-founder, Nathan Gettings had actually worked at PayPal. So I was just leveraging the network that was really fresh and transporting that into angel investing or venture. And then your network decays over time. And then you have to reinvent yourself and use other tactics and techniques and strategies. Your network will not be that fresh.
Totally.
So I think your first 1 or 2 years actually should be very good if you have a strong network. Then you have to figure out how do you become successful without a fresh network.
On the network front.
PayPal. Fair. So we didn't talk about Fair. So Fair, both of the co-founders, the CEO and COO currently worked for me at Square.
Interesting.
So Fair was a very controversial investment, actually. Most people did not appreciate Fair, especially the seed.
Was this at KV or?
KV.
Okay.
KV in 2015 or so. So almost nobody appreciated it. They're like, Amazon's killing retail, blah, 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 blah. And people's brains just locked. I would say even internally, many people did not appreciate what Fair was up to, but they trusted me. They're like, these guys worked for you at Square. If you think they're awesome, of course we should invest in a seed.
Totally.
So I did, but
and were they people you were tracking, or they just reached out to you? Hey, Keith.
No, they reached out. I mean, they worked directly for me.
Awesome.
So we played soccer. Like I hired them to Square from my soccer team.
So
they'd even brainstormed with me. Max had a couple of actually really bad ideas that he almost did instead of Fair.
Awesome.
And I persuaded him not to do them.
Good.
One was atrocious. It was like insurance for Latin American drivers.
Nice.
And then the second one wasn't as atrocious. It was like using a different drill, like a gold drill, and for your like dental work. That one had IP issues,
People
but
like
anyway,
gold,
Fair was much better.
Gold is ripping.
So anyway, but that one, it was very different because the art was both just not getting too obsessed on the idea. In fact, if you go to the Fair's office today, there's a quote in the office hanging from me, which says, my first quote when they pitched me on Fair versus the other two was, "This is not obviously terrible." It's still hanging in their office because it actually had there was a kernel of a really good idea there, but I knew I was going to invest in them. It's just a question of what are they going to do, and could I help steer them into something that hopefully would pay real dividends, which
totally
they found. And then after the seed, though, what was interesting was they uncovered this financial services edge to what they were doing. At that point, I was like, this is the greatest thing ever, because the founding team had all worked at Square and Cash App. And so I was like, now you're doing something not just in retail, you're doing financial services, which all four of you have a competitive advantage in. Okay, now I want to lead the A. So we co-led the A with Kirsten.
Awesome.
And same thing, again, only in a few months. So one of the other lessons of being an early stage investor. So Ramp led the seed. 4 months later, we led the Series A. Same thing was true at Fair.
4 months from seed to A.
Yep.
Wow.
It was actually after the first board meeting, it was like, oh my God, like we need to double down.
Wow.
Fair, same thing. Roughly 6 months later.
With the Ramp, let me just ask you.
They had 30K of GMV.
Holy cow.
Like 30K. Like, you know how small that is in financial services?
Not a whole lot.
My Amex card sometimes has that.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
And then the same thing was also true. When you find something really good at seed, I think you do want to double down quickly. So definitely did that at Ramp, and it paid massive dividends. Did that at Fair. It was very successful. And then also did that. I was thinking of a third company where the same thing happened. Seed immediately. Oh, I mentioned Avon. Same thing. So like you found the right founders for the right company. Figure out how to invest more money as soon as you can.
Totally.
I lost. Actually, I tried to do that at DoorDash, but lost. Partially a mistake on my part, and partially how our firm as a whole handled the situation. But in any event, I led the seed, wanted to lead the A. Alfred and Sequoia wound up leading it.
I mean, not the worst person to lose to.
No, but in fact, actually, it's kind of funny. If I lose, it's all.
Is it him
I've
normally?
tracked every loss ever, and 75% of every. And I know every term sheet I've ever lost. I count them, and there's a handful, whatever.
Yep.
But 75% are Sequoia, and 75% of those are Halford. But then I have a whole list of ones they lost to me, and usually they do the opposite. Like they were getting frustrated and marking up all my seeds. Like they had a whole list of all these. They had like 6 in a row, I think, of seed investments I'd made that Sequoia had marked up, and they didn't like that.
If there was a way to just invest alongside you all the way, I'm sure a lot of people would do that, Keith.
Yeah, it's a decent strategy, but ramp wasn't quite as consensus as you believe. I actually think it was the most difficult, in a certain sense, high conviction investment I made. The reason why was everybody was Brex,
Totally.
including Peter, because I was at Founders Fund when I led the first round at Ramp. Peter had invested $1 million personally in Brex.
Interesting.
So imagine the conversation. Wow. So I was like, Peter, we just need to do this.
You were still able to do the deal?
Well, I was like, we're doing this. Like this isn't an option. There's things like you need to know when to really say like we're definitely doing this, and this was one of those. We are definitely doing this. I don't really care.
Totally.
But you can imagine the level of conviction. You can't do that every day. You can't do that with your partners every day or every week or every month. You need to really know why. And so I did. I had a very strong thesis why Brex was going to implode.
Yep.
Turned out to be right.
Mm-hmm.
Second, so that took a lot of conviction. And then secondly, there's not a lot of success historically in funding, in competing with a startup that's already hit escape velocity. It's great to fund a startup that's competing with the legacy incumbents that we all make fun of.
Totally.
Financial services,
yeah.
JPMC, love to compete with JPMC,
a lot of fun
whatever. But usually the best angle is not, hey, there's this well-funded startup that seems to have some trajectory. We're going to fund the second best. That has generally been a bad strategy. So it had a lot of friction there. But one anecdote, you'll love this. He's going to love this because I'm going to name him. My friend Lockie was running his first fund, which I was one of his early LPs.
Can you introduce me? I'd love
one
to
of his early LPs. And we got him a bit of an allocation in the round, and he turned it down because it was too small of an allocation because we wanted 15% ownership, so it was like $3 million. Anyway, Lockie turned it down, and I ran into him that day at Barry's in the Castro, and he told me he turned it down, and I just looked at him like I was completely floored. I'm like, Lockie, this investment will return your fund. Like, go fix that. And he didn't, but later found a way to get to be an investor. But the small allocation we gave him would have easily returned his fund. But I knew it that day at Barry's. I never tell friends like Lockie, this is definitely going to return your fund unless it's definitely going to return their fund. And I knew it day one.
I think that is a big reason why people want to work for you. Honestly, that's when I talk to partners, they have a short list of firms they would entertain. They also have a short list of GPs, like people, MPs, right? Like people that are leading the ship, and you're on a lot of those short lists.
So here's the problem with that. And it's flattering. Obviously, it's great. But learning by osmosis, you can't bring an entourage of people to meet with a founder or to a board meeting.
Yeah.
And so the number of people you can work closely with in venture is very limited compared to a company. You can scale yourself more in a company as an executive and work with more people. And so I found company building to be much more exciting from a kind of mentoring approach than actually venture. Venture, you kind of have to do it sequentially because the founders just don't want you to show up with 3 people, and you don't want to offend the founders you're working with. It's, I used to, when I first hired a chief of staff, it wasn't that common actually in venture. Vinod had one for a long time, but most VCs,
How long ago was your first chief of staff?
2015.
Holy cow.
And
that's 7 years before I started seeing them.
So it was a very intentional hack, and actually related to a point we discussed. I'll come back to it. But I had to use a lot of my own personal credibility to bring, Delian was the first, to bring Delian along to meetings. But I was adamant because I was like, he will not learn what he needs to learn unless he's sitting in the meetings with me. It's not valuable unless I bring him to the best pitches, the best board meetings, the best one-on-ones.
Totally.
So, but at first, I actually had to persuade several CEOs. There was only one who generally would kick him out. And that person actually didn't do that well, so maybe it's about. But in any event, now it's more common. But I can't have like 3 people. That'd be insane. Like every founder would like shoot me.
Totally.
So that's part of the problem in working, with people. You kind of have to do it sequentially, which I haven't found a solution to.
It makes sense. It makes a lot of sense because the founders are going to want to work with you too.
Well, they want to have confidential. The reality is the founders are right. Like most of what I do is discussing the most complicated, difficult challenges in the company.
Totally.
And that's usually extremely confidential. It's about people, it's about strategy, it's about concerns, about financing.
Sure.
So you clearly don't want to be exposed to a bunch of random people. So that's why it doesn't work. So if you have a solution to that, that'd be great. I would love to partner with more, investors and work with them, but you have to be very selective about how to do this.
Totally. You don't have to share anything here if you're not comfortable sharing. I'm curious. I think Ramp aligning with TBPN, people like, Coogan and Doherty, like day zero was not only brilliant, but it was just like, it's the right vibe on the right channel at the right time.
So let's talk about why did I lead the Series A immediately after. There's first board meeting. There was 3 things in that board meeting that led to this conclusion. One was the partnerships required to ship a ramp card. There's like 3 or 4 different moving pieces you have to negotiate. They had already finished it in X months, and I had never seen it done in like less than 9 months, and they had already finished it in 3.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, speed of execution, cleverness, all there, A+. Secondly, we spent the whole board meeting, other than 3 slides, reviewing candidates, talking about the team you build, the company you build. They literally went through LinkedIn profiles, like 10 deep, maybe sometimes more than 10 deep for every single role that was open. And we reviewed them and talked through like what we liked and what we didn't like.
Incredible.
And how to clone them or not clone them. Okay, so they were taking the talent density thing extremely serious. I've still never seen any other founder do that, by the way.
I was just going to ask you that.
And then third is Eric described the value proposition we were going to launch with, like the marketing collateral. And it was better than I hoped. And I was like, oh my God, the CEO knows marketing. Wow. Okay, we're off to the races.
A pod was He
literally had 3 slides that described what we're going to launch with. And I was like, oh, wow. This isn't like the high level from the pitch. This is like, here's the concrete. We're going to save you time and money. Boom, 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 boom. I'm like, oh my God, this is actually excellent. You find a CEO who knows how to do marketing, you should almost always invest, period. Like that is the rarest trait. So he could cut through the clutter of Amex and Brex. He had it all nailed on that one side. I was like, I walked down the elevator with Delian, and Delian was like, you think we should, preempt the A? I'm like, yes, call Singerman right now and get his approval. Like literally, I was like on the elevator. I'm like, call Brian right now and make sure he's okay with it.
That's amazing.
Same thing was true at Fair. The delta that was noticeable and stark at Fair was we discovered financial services was a core asset for the company and the team had an unfair advantage.
Yep.
Secondly, their speed of execution was off the charts. So from board meeting 1 to board meeting 2, they had identified the root causes of what wasn't working and had already shipped fixes. And then that became a pattern that you could see at first 2 years, like ruthlessly, we'd identify problems at board meetings.
Yep.
Dive into the potential causes. And by the next board meeting, they'd always not only use quantitative analysis and other techniques to identify the root causes of the problems, but already ship solutions and could already report back on whether they were working. And that cycle is incredibly successful for startups.
I bet.
So there's always this anomaly that shows up really fast. The Avon anomaly was Saudi, who's the founder and CEO of Avon, which also I had met originally. We'd extended an offer to be chief product officer for Opendoor.
No kidding.
And he turned it down. But when he started a company, he called me up. So it's like, again, a kind of a network, extended network kind of relationship. But anyway, the thing that showed up between the seed and A was he had contingency plans for every contingency. And in financial services, that's extremely difficult to do. Like multiple partners in case, he basically didn't believe in any single point of failure, which engineers and technical people always build for. In financial services, to implement that across your stack with partnerships, it's basically unprecedented. I've never seen anybody pull it off before. I was like, I've literally been doing this for 20 years and no one pulls this off. I used to manage at PayPal all our financial services relationships. Like I did that for a living. I made some pretty good strategic moves and changed some stuff up that saved us a lot of money and lots of things. But like even at PayPal scale as a public company, getting redundancy everywhere was something that my team didn't quite get to. So he did it like in the first 3 months of a startup.
You mentioned your team. I want to hit on just like talent and team building a little bit.
Yep.
So like I will call out, like I stood up Nucleus because I do think the venture landscape will look incredibly different in the next 3 to 5 years. I am very aligned with emerging and breakout managers. So like I love Kosa. Kosa is like not someone that I'm working with, but it's because the needs are very different. From like a partner in talent perspective, you have someone like Kelly Kennard, who's in the Hall of Fame of search. You don't need me. It's a different thing. But I am curious, for the emerging managers that are tuning in, just hearing like how you think about hiring and evaluating talent, I think would be really valuable. You mentioned your team. We have someone like Trent in the room right now. You look at Trent's background on LinkedIn, went from, talk about a career arc, right? Like from entry.
I think he had 6 promotions in 2.5 years.
Like absolutely remarkable, right? And like those promotions are earned every single time, right? So I'm like, I'm just genuinely curious. Like when you think about the associate scorecard, hypothetical role open right now, associate under you, what does that look like? Is it something in particular? Is it a scorecard? Like what is it?
I don't believe in scorecards, and I think this is maybe my bias in funding founders. Every exceptional founder is extraordinary, but they're extraordinary in different ways. I'm looking for that proverbial spike.
Mm-hmm.
They are in the top 1 basis points on some dimension. So, one of the founders that I've worked with is the most tenacious person I know. One's like the smartest, et cetera. And it can be anything, but I'm looking for that, like a spike. Like, why do you have an unfair edge? It really comes down to that. Like the world's hyper competitive. Venture has too much dollars. Everybody knows. I saw a podcast with Roll Off recently with Jack Altman.
Yep.
Another great emerging manager, by
Love
the way.
him.
So talking about how he did the math, which is Roll Off's specialty, of why there's way too much capital chasing very few opportunities. And that's true. So if you're going to win in venture, you need to have an edge. And the earlier in your career you identify what is your edge, the better you're going to do. So when I meet someone and they want to roll in venture, the question is, can I envision some edge somewhere? Now, if they're great, they can communicate the edge to me and I don't have to do the detective work.
Totally.
Sometimes early in their career, actually, I have to pull it out of them of like, what's the edge? And it can be like sometimes it's a personal story. One of my favorite ones ever is one of my close friends, who's a founder, told me this story when he was working at Uber. He was like one of these launch city people who's moving around the globe constantly. So he was in a new market, and the team there he wanted to bond with. He didn't really know them that well. They were going to do a triathlon that weekend. So he was like, sure, this is like Wednesday or Thursday when he finds out about it. It's going to be like Saturday. So he didn't train. That, other people do.
Yeah.
But he didn't own a bike. So what did he do? He used a city bike to run, to like, ride a triathlon, because he didn't want to, like, he's too frugal to buy a bike. And he didn't have time probably to buy one. So like no excuses, like he's like in the no excuses world. So you find these like traits and then you sort of extract from them. But unless you have an advantage, it's really difficult to be successful, I think, in any field. So I'm always, every time I meet somebody, even when I meet people in other fields like music or sports, I'm always trying to, or Trump, actually, I did this with Trump like exhaustively. Some of my friends know. For 2 years, I sat down trying to figure out, why is Trump so successful? All the criticisms easy to find. Like all the flaws are very easy to find. They're chronicled in books, publications, open up X, you find critiques all you want. Same thing is true of most founders. The criticisms and the critiques are easy. It's like, why do you have an unfair advantage, and what is that, and how do you triple down on that? And so that's what I'm looking for when I meet a junior person, is some unique advantage, and then the rest can develop later.
Interesting.
It's the same thing true for GPs, by the way. So we didn't talk about like what's the reason why I like to compete with people.
Totally.
And the reason why I occasionally do well is, the reality is I want to back founders. I don't really care about anything else. So I'm just in the founder assessment business. So the reason why I want to be the earliest possible investor is there is nothing else for my competitors to look at. I want to see a keynote deck and a team slide. That's all I need to make an investment decision typically.
Love it.
Who the hell else in venture, in a traditional institutional fund, wants to write several $1 million check on a team slide for unknown people? That's where my alpha is.
I freaking love it.
So other people have different alphas. Like Vinod, for example, has lots of alpha, but it's technology wave driven.
Yep.
He's a technologist.
Yep.
He sees things other people do not see, myself included. Like he was publishing articles about the future of AI in 2013, like how AI is going to replace all your doctors. He just envisioned any technical breakthrough, what it can be and what it can do. That's not me. Like, I shouldn't be competing on that dimension because I'm going to lose to people like him, or Mark Andreessen's another technology-driven investor who's very good.
Totally. He's on the list. Mark made the list. He's in the top 10. Cost to Open Door. So you made me a fortune the last couple of months, Keith. I knew you were. I had a sense that you were going to come back, and we are, for what it's worth. We're filming in Pompeo's office right now in the studio. So I feel like I have
he was
to
very helpful.
Have to make an open plug right now. But I had this like sense that you were going to come back and like try to save it. And I obviously follow you on X, and like I went not huge, but like enough where I'm like super pumped right now. And getting someone like Kaz, who I know for a fact, like I was doing a CEO search, Series C Andreessen Company, my last firm, article. He was shortlisted. It was a search anyone would have taken. They were looking at sitting CEOs and first time CEOs, right? I know for a fact one of my best friends over at True Search absolutely has him on shortlist. I know people have been putting excellent opportunities in front of him for at least 2 years. How, and I know you've said this, so I don't want you to regurgitate it. Like, how did you make that happen?
Sure. Well, so it's true. Like, he had turned down like every possible like approach. He was like, I'm in my dream job at Shopify. There's nothing better. I don't want to leave. However, I had like one little secret. Last February, he'd been texting me that Open Door was, insanely undervalued, and he'd been spending his weekends modeling how to buy it out for fun, like for fun. And his wife is getting annoyed that he was spending all his free time modeling buying Open Door. So when we were trying to find an appropriate CEO, because the last CEO was catastrophic, when I started this project, I was trying to find like a reasonable CEO. The spark was, oh my God. It was actually, Trent reminded me of the spark, actually. The spark was, because I told him the story where that Kaz was trying to buy Open Door. The spark was, oh my God, he might actually really want to do this. And that's the most important thing for recruiting top tier executives, CEOs, is they actually really want to do it. Like, you can't sell them on something they don't really want to do. But he actually really wanted to fix and build Open Door, even in his free time. So I told Paul DeVersa, who's very good at executive search, like, Kaz, and he looked up because he knew that, he'd approached him about OpenAI and all these other companies and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, he kind of stared at me, and I was like, no. Like, trust me, he's been texting me about buying Open Door for a year. Like, I actually think like this is very real. So part of it's understanding what people are interested in their motivations, especially at world-class talent level.
Paul's absolutely on that Mount Rushmore I was talking
Paul's
about.
the best. I use Paul like all the time.
Yeah. I think there's a couple others out there. I'm actually putting a graphic together right now to highlight the other like S tier search firms that I have a ton of respect for.
Paul's relentless. He even tried like a couple months into my first job at KV. When I first started KV, a couple months in, he like tried to persuade me to leave like 3 months in. He didn't care.
I mean,
it was actually a pretty good role.
Respect you. Well, you were probably the best person for the job, and he wanted to do everything he could.
They chose this incompetent person.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they're doing really well.
That person got fired. Don't worry.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Okay, so I want to move to culture, pace, ambition. When you're like one, actually, I skipped one. Is Coastal hiring right now?
Oh, definitely.
You are.
KR Coastal Ventures.
KR Coastal Ventures.
Yeah. If you want to send us anybody, like, we're definitely hiring all stripes, like different, don't have to be an expert, any domain expertise, generalized investment experience, non-investment experience. I'd like, actually, for younger people, I do like angel investment experience if you have some.
Cool.
I think that's better than none. At least you can have a conversation about why'd you invest?
Sure.
How'd you identify the founder? What resonated with you? I think it's very difficult to even have those kind of preliminary conversations with people who've never written a check.
Does it matter if it, like, when you're looking at the angel
magnitude of the check?
Does it matter? And I want to see if we're aligned here. Does it matter if the angel deal was done like last month or last year? Are you looking at it as a signal of like clear interest in investing? Any time. Just so they can talk through
like, okay, how did you know this founder? Why did they just say take your money? What about the business or the founder, resonated with you? It's just hard to have even that kind of conversation to draw out someone's brain.
Yep.
If they haven't, at least done some of that. And It's a decent proxy for what you do as a venture investor. It's not the same.
Yep.
But it's the closest proxy. So I think we generally, speaking for all my partners at KV,
Sure.
probably are more excited about a candidate who's at least had some angel investments, while they've been doing some other role building a company.
Totally. And we're in New York right now. You live here. I know you guys are out in the Bay also. Are you in San Francisco and the Peninsula, or where?
Mostly in Menlo Park. So
Mostly
we prefer candidates truthfully want to live in the Bay Area.
Yep.
That'd be best.
Why is that? Is that just where the AI founders are?
It's a center of gravity for certainly the firm, which is important. When you join a new firm, you want to learn from as many people as possible, forge as many relationships within the firm.
Yep.
I work with everybody in the firm. Like I'm constantly probably spamming at this point my AI colleagues with investment opportunities to get their feedback.
Yep.
Even the healthcare team, I'm somewhat spamming with opportunities.
Love it.
So I think it's really important when you start your career to have the relationships and expertise. So like, for example, when I joined KV, I had to really reinvent myself as an AI investor. I had never made any AI investments when I joined KV. 6 months in, I still hadn't. Rogo in New York was my first one in July. And the only reason I was able to make that investment confidently was Gabe, CEO, central casting for the founders I like to work with. Like I knew as soon as I met him for coffee, I definitely wanted to invest, but I knew nothing about AI. However, I had 3 colleagues, Vinod, Sven, and John Chu, who know a lot about AI. So I was able to get all of their feedback. Is there anything I'm missing? Is their technical approach smart? Is their team capable of pulling this off? So I could lean into the investment. Now, 2/3, I think we published the stats recently, 2/3 or maybe 3/4 of my investments over the last 2 years are now AI. I could not have done that without Vinod, Sven, and John's partnership.
Incredible. And are you like partner, more junior? What are we?
All of the above. Like we truthfully have a large fund.
Yep.
And there's so many companies, and our mantra, our strategy at KV is bold, early, impactful. So bold, the partners can handle that part a lot.
Yep.
Early, we need a team that can spot opportunities before anybody else. And impactful, that's the relationship with the founder and the vision. Is this a positive impact? Would the company be a positive impact society? But impact, does KV have significant impact in the trajectory of the company? So we really need colleagues who can really help with that.
I love it. Again, I have KV in like the Andreessen bucket, Founders Fund bucket, like exceptional firm, not going anywhere, period. I will say on KV, I think of all like the folks who are a little bit more mature with built out platforms right now. I mentioned Kelly earlier. Everyone I've met from the KV platform team or in an operating partner capacity, like a Bruce Armstrong or like a Peter Buckland, absolute S tier humans in just like the best at the craft.
Yeah, you should meet some more. We now have a growth marketing team. Britt Broman, who worked with me at Square and Open Door actually, and Ryan Scott. So we built that out function to help companies scale customers, which is critical. We're spending a lot of time. My partner Samir has really been investing a lot of his energy and amplifying our operating team. Mm-hmm. So we're turning, it's always been a competitive asset. We're trying to amplify it.
I love it. Okay. I have one open question and then like a little rapid fire.
Sure.
And get you out on time.
Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. So just like, how do you actually structure your week? You're the chair at Open. You help run one of the best firms in the Valley, right? You mentioned you're on other boards as well. You go to Barry's all the time. And then I reach out cold on X, like 4 or 5, 6 months ago by now. And you give me time for coffee and you spend a whole hour with me geeking out on everything venture. Like, how do you do that?
Great question. We track it ruthlessly is the first step.
You do?
Yes. So actually, my chief of staff pairs with my EA because we're trying to...
So you have a chief of staff and an EA?
Yes. The EA deals with logistics, scheduling board meetings, like where's this meeting, et cetera. And have a lot of meetings. You imagine most venture people have lots of meetings and orchestrating the meetings because there's usually like multiple attendees and all stuff. So, but we try to analyze every quarter very carefully. How do I allocate my time? How much is KV? How much is portfolio? And what do I do within that portfolio? Is it one-on-one time with the CEO? Is it recruiting for the company? Is it attending board meetings? What geo?
You'll recruit for the company.
Oh, absolutely. Like I help sometimes source, sometimes assess, and sometimes close, and sometimes all three. Founders use me, whoever can be most helpful. So sometimes they already know who they want to close and it's just like, help close. Sometimes they're like, what do you think of this CFO candidate? Or what do you think of these two candidates? And sometimes it's like, do you know anybody who can actually do this? So do all three. So we break that down. We also break down like how much time is in like pitches, like pitch, official pitch meetings.
Interesting.
And then how much is like, on random things like conferences or media or things like that. And then look at the allocation and say, okay, we want to dial this up. This looks a little too low, or this looks, a little bit off, what I'd want it to be. And then let's try to effectuate that next quarter.
Amazing.
So the first thing is measure. It's like a calendar audit, standard thing I've been teaching like executives since 2013.
Sure.
And how to operate lecture is just like audit your calendar. What are your real priorities? And then how do you audit to make sure your calendar conforms to your priorities?
I love it. It's not like a Monday board thing, Tuesday this thing. It is.
No, having been able to, when you're dealing with so many different companies, if I was running one company only, I think that schedule where you concentrate, you don't context switch is probably better.
Totally.
I happen to context switch pretty well.
Yeah.
So I don't mind it, but I don't think it's possible when you deal with 20 external companies.
Context switch here. If you had to click a button to reset venture today, what's like one rule or norm that really bothers you or needs to go with? What would you change about venture today?
Well, the obvious thing is what Roloff mentioned, which is there's too much capital chasing, call it 20 companies a year that actually produce returns. And that's maybe being generous.
Yeah.
And so then the question is, how do you fix that? Obviously, you don't constrain the capital. It's a free market. We believe in capitalism. So if LPs want to invest in venture, can't really constrain that. So I don't have a solution, unfortunately. But I think first thing is any problem, being aware of the problem sometimes allows for creativity around solutions. But we're all guilty of participating in that. And I know people say, oh, it's just you don't want competition and blah, 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 blah. But the reality is it's a little bit like Major League Baseball. There's only so many people on the planet that can throw a fastball 90 miles an hour. And we have not learned how to teach people to throw a fastball 90 miles an hour. Unless you start at maybe 88, all the coaching in the world is not going to get you above 90. And if you can't throw 90, your chance of being a major league pitcher is almost zero. And so Major League Baseball just cannot expand without changing the game completely. Venture is a little bit like that. There's only 20 founders a year that probably can build an iconic company.
Interesting.
And we haven't figured out how to mint more.
Interesting. I love that metaphor and I'm going to steal it, to be honest with you. You just came into open. You came back, I should say. If you could take over one other public company for a year.
Well, the one I'd want to take over, I definitely don't have the time to do this, is Apple. So I was an Apple fanboy all my life. When I met Tim Cook for the first time in 2013, first time I met him one-on-one, I walked in and said, I own every SKU you've ever produced except for I don't have every color of the iPod. And he actually quizzed me. He's like, do you have this and that? I'm like, duh, yeah, you want me to send it to you tomorrow? So definitely would like to help, that fix the future of that company because I think they are struggling with how to adopt in an AI world. It hasn't shown up yet because they are vertically integrated, which is my preferred strategy generally. The ability to compete with them on hardware, batteries, chips, et cetera, is very rare. Yep. But eventually someone's going to break through that because AI is so powerful that it can disrupt one of the best companies on the planet.
The entire experience of going to an Apple store for me every time is so amazing that I really hope they figure it out because I genuinely am a little bit worried that there's nothing there.
I do like my Air though, by the way. This is a great device.
Interesting.
The battery drain's a little fast.
Oh, that is really thin
but
too.
It's super thin, super lightweight. It is actually quite delightful. Yeah,
that is.
If you feel it, you'll see.
Can I feel it actually?
There you go.
Apple commercial. Damn.
I thought I made my first Apple commercial.
Let's go. All right, pay this guy.
I achieved my career ambition.
We're getting you out on time today. It's the last one. So you're number one on the new Midas. Well, I have to stop saying that. You're not because I'm going to get sued. You're number one on the Nucleus100.
The best list ever.
Best list ever.
Many people are saying.
Everyone's saying this. Everyone keeps telling me this. We are aiming, and the reason why I've been bugging everyone on Twitter, on X for the last 3 months and chasing founders and chasing admins, chasing all this data and asking, we're trying to do it right. We're trying to do everything we possibly can to do it right. We're aiming for this to be the new gold standard to tracking investor performance. And we'll have different flavors, growth, right? Category, vintage, the whole thing. The year's 2035. Keith, you are chilling on the beach or you are hanging out. You're probably still on some boards, but you're like enjoying life and you're not doing early stage investing. There's probably not a world that doesn't happen. But let's hypothetical. Who am I sitting down with that's number one on the Nucleus 100?
Well, look, Vinod's still doing this. So that sets a pretty high bar for me. And, the president of the United States is pretty good at what he does, and he's 80.
That's a good point.
So 2035 might be easy. That said, I do believe strongly that there are some things you get better at in venture and some things that decay. We talked about the network that decays.
Yep.
Peter Fenton's talked a lot about some of the other disadvantages of age, which I strongly believe in. However, my goal would be to still be number one in a decade. That's going to be hard, but I have companies that have made lots of really good early stage investments over the last 2 years that will take a while to grow up. Before I get credit on your refined, perfect gold standard benchmark list, it's going to be 3, 4, 5 years before they earn that. And so, might still try to be competing for that space. Hopefully, like my favorite sort of vice is EDM music. And, Tiesto and Armand can still compete with the up and coming DJs. Actually, when I spend time with them, the most important thing I'm always asking is like, how do you compete with these 21-year-old DJs? Like, because it's very impressive. They're my age and they're still at the top of the game. Like if you ask an up and coming DJ, who's still the best in front of a crowd, they'll say Tiesto. And so I always try to find things like ways. So I don't want to give up on.
What about number two? No, you're going to stay there. I agree. Okay. Number two.
Number two. Will probably be someone who hasn't entered the business yet. Because I think the disruption of AI is so important and so fundamental that I think the blinders of being a VC historically will not be friends of people in their current 30s, 40s, or 50s. So I'd bet it's an unknown person in their 20s. If you forced me to pick someone who's currently doing it, actually, Jack Altman's got a shot.
100%.
I'd say Delian has a shot. They're both young enough, already experienced enough, already have networks and insights. But I hope to still be able to beat them.
I love it.
I still try to, beat everybody at Barry's who's half my age. So
why
not?
I love it. I'm going to add, since I asked you, I'm going to add I agree with those.
Oh, you tell me, by the way. Yeah, where's the research?
No. So those are actually like absolutely. So I'm going to give I'll give those. I'm going to throw Leah Marie.
She's doing well.
From KP. Yep. Up there. I'm going to throw Hirsch from NFDG up there, who's also just like an incredible human that I absolutely love. And then I'm going to throw Basic. I'm going to throw Alana Goyle up there. Solo, absolutely incredible track record. I haven't met anyone who's not wildly impressed with how hard she works and how smart she is. And I've never met her. But those would be like my ads also.
I know some of them, and you're right. They all have high potential. The ones I don't know, I need to beat.
We'll try to.
I hear KV's hiring.
All right, that was my last one. Keith, thank you so much for hanging today.
Pleasure to be with you.
All right, awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.